there's not a lot of church documents out there that specifically target the entrepreneur. But one of the ones I really would hope all of you look at is what's called the Vocation of the Business Leader document. It came out from the Vatican. And that document is a really good modern offering and an effort for the church, I think, to describe the nobility. First of all, I think that one of the key things from that document is that it paints the entrepreneur and the business leader as a noble calling. The noble callings are not just the priests and the nuns. The noble callings are not just the first responders. The noble callings are not just the missionaries. But the church specifically said in that document, you have a noble calling. Business leadership is a noble calling. It's something that God esteems and values and notes and has chosen you for, right? It's a calling, right? That's what I mean.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Catholic Founders Podcast. I'm your host, Silas Maynor. How do you scale a business without losing your soul in the frenetic hurry of the world? Today's guest has a unique perspective on that tension. I'm joined by Father Nathaniel Haslam, a priest with the Legionaries of Christ and a chaplain for the Lumen Institute. Father Nathaniel was an atheist engineer and businessman aiming for billionaire status before God ended up calling him to the priesthood. Now, he mentors top executives on how to weave Christ into the boardroom, so to speak. This episode covers a range of topics, but a key theme that we cover is preparing for Lent, hence why we are releasing this 2 days early. The other topics that we do cover, and there's many of them because he has such a wealth of knowledge, is the nobility of business, why entrepreneurship is actually a holy calling to co-create with God. We cover the talent trap, why burying your gifts out of fear is a mistake, and how to invest them for the kingdom, I guess you could say. Then we cover the generosity thermometer, as we kind of refer to it here, and that is using almsgiving and the litany of humility to keep your heart free from the grip of success. If you've ever felt like your professional ambition and your faith kind of were at odds, this conversation is for you. So a little bit of housekeeping. We are hoping to have Father on the pod on a regular basis. So if you have burning questions and you'd like me to ask him in the future, please do send them my way. And obviously share this episode and share this podcast. Give some feedback, because a little more feedback will help Father be maybe a little bit more motivated to continue coming on. So thank you so much. Please enjoy this episode with Father Nathaniel Haslam. All right. Welcome to the podcast, Father Nathaniel. How are you doing today?
Good to see you. It's a pleasure to be on here. Thanks for doing this.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on. We're really pleased to have our first priest on the podcast. It's probably should have been sooner, but hey, a year later is not too bad. So,
not too late.
Just to give, I guess, a little bit of context, everybody. So we connected in person at the Sent Summit in 2025. I was obviously a little bit familiar with some of your work because of the Lumen Institute, which I'm a member of, technically the New York City chapter. I don't know if we're going to get a Nashville chapter anytime soon. I think there's one in Atlanta, right?
Correct. There is.
So maybe I'll collaborate with Michael a little bit to make something happen in Nashville eventually. But point is, I'm a big fan of what you guys are doing with Lumen and your support of them. But for people who are not familiar with Lumen Institute and with what you guys are doing, could you just give a little bit of kind of context on yourself and specifically the work you guys do with the Lumen Institute and how it started, et cetera?
Sure. Well, there's a lot there to pack in, and I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes. It could take a whole hour just on that. I mean, the very, very brief version of all of that is, look, I never thought I'd be a priest. I was an atheist, businessman, trained out of Rensselaer up in New York. I thought I'd be a billionaire, travel the world. Again, not maybe your typical, what you'd think would be a future priest, right? But that was 26 years ago. God called me to the Legionaries of Christ after a lot of soul searching, after a lot of things went on, got me there, 12 years of formation, ordained at the Tomb of St. Paul, Christmas Eve 2010 in Rome. And I was sent to Houston, Texas, where I've been based ever since, to help start the Houston chapter of the Lumen Institute. Lumen itself was an effort of 4 individuals in particular, one of our priests and 3 senior business leaders in the Northeast, to basically offer, taking the examples of Young Presidents Organization and other such executive groups. They felt there was a real space to offer highly personalized attention for men and women that are key decision makers in the business and cultural space. And that from a Catholic perspective, there were other groups out there like Legatus and such that were already doing some good work. But as far as offering more, it's just like you would have maybe if you're looking for an exercise coach or an executive coach or a nutritional coach, that someone's going to walk with you and go a little deeper in that specific part of your life. They felt like there really wasn't in the Catholic world, and for executives and entrepreneurs, an organization would really help walk with those people and do not just nice exhortations, not just nice dinners or speakers, but actually how do we inculcate the life of Christ, the virtues, business ethics, et cetera, into and weave them into your personal life. So basically highly personalized and small groups to do that. So we have one-to-one spiritual coaching with Legionaries of Christ chaplains. And in the future, we may go to cities where we don't have legionaries, but can have a diocesan priest, say, or another chaplain that's willing to work with us in that, and basically do one-to-one life coaching, small group dynamics every month, where we take, say, for example, last month, all of our groups around Mexico, Canada, United States, they took the virtue of self-mastery and applied it to conflict management in business.
Mm.
This month, the virtue of justice, or we call fairness in Lumen, give to God and others what is their due. How does that work in negotiation? So all these smaller groups of anywhere from 10 to 25 business leaders in different cities, they're going to meet and have a 2 to 3 hour meeting where they're going to kind of take that virtue that Christ models as a leader and apply it to a specific area of business leadership. And so
Mhm.
that way we're trying to take these virtues and kind of weave them in best practices and have the group dynamic sharpen the saw, together as
Yeah.
leaders together. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
It's very, I just want to comment on it. Like I was part of it while I was in New York, and I'm still technically a paying member, but I always found it really like helpful to be able to go deep on the virtues and just have that kind of open and honest conversation with all the guys in the circle that you just get to know them further through that like deeper spiritual experience. And I also think that the spiritual direction that goes along with it is just really helpful. So if anybody is in one of those cities, I would check out Lumen Institute to see if there's a chapter near you, because it's very powerful. Really appreciate what you guys are doing there. So I did want to ask maybe one last follow up on that is, who is it for? Like if anybody is considering joining, like who would
Yeah.
be a good target to consider that?
Yeah, good question. So really, we'll say we have two main age groups. I mean, one is sort of the young professionals, the young leaders group called the Fellows Program, and that's typically anywhere from like 25 to 35 years range, and then full membership would be more your 35, especially 40 and up range. Who we don't Our criteria for joining, we could say, is basically key decision makers. So we're not so much revenue based as some executive groups are. We're not like looking at you manage 10 million or 1 million or 50 million. It's not that for us. We're looking more that you're running teams of people, you're a key decision maker. So perhaps the founder of the company, in bigger companies, the C-level executive or the executive VPs. For entrepreneurial endeavors, right? Typically, at least in the young professional program, we might have single sole operators, as they're kind of on the beginning of their entrepreneurial endeavors. They're kind of showing us that young leadership, that beginning stages of executive leadership at a younger age. For the full program, you're kind of 40 and up. We're looking more for individuals, entrepreneurs, let's say in that case, for that maybe have a bigger firm. Maybe they've grown it to at least, 15, 20 employees. So they're overseeing a whole team of individuals. And so
Hmm.
whether the idea is in the senior program that whether you're the business owner that has 15 or 25 employees, you're making some on a maybe more micro level, you're making similar decisions than the guy that's running the 5,000 person company. You have
Yeah.
personnel issues like the person with the bigger company, you have stakeholders, you have, risk management, you have hiring and firing challenges, all that compensation challenges. So, but at the end of the day, that way there's sort of a bit of even though maybe differential in terms of size of company, it's a little bit kind of peer to peer.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so so you're basically in that key decision making role. You want to grow. You want to sharpen the saw and go deeper with a priest and a small group, and you're willing to commit some time. Typically 3 to 4 hours a month between the one-to-one
Yeah.
spiritual coaching and the group dynamic. So
Hmm.
not everybody's looking for that deeper, more personalized, and it's a more investment of time, right? Versus I show up for a dinner meeting and listen to a speaker. That's easy. This requires a little more effort.
Little more. Yeah. No, it certainly is very impactful. I can speak from experience. I would
And
really encourage people to check it out.
one last thing, if I might, I'd say there's two types of people also that join typically in Lumen. One is the already active Catholic entrepreneur executive, and they're looking for more camaraderie. They're looking for best practices. They're looking for a community of fellow leaders that are engaged in the faith, and maybe even a little bit of evangelizing and mentoring others who are not in the business community. Because the second type a person typically coming is, let's say, the fallen away Catholic. We're not a Holy Rollers Club, and we're not like expecting everybody to be a weekly, even weekly mass goer person. We really see Lumen as a moment, a discipleship and an onboarding for some that really feel like, hey, I've been successful, but I know something's calling me to now not just be a 10 in business, but a 10 in
Mm-hmm.
life. And I need something
100%.
that feels safe, and I don't feel like I have to be like got it all together yet. And
Mm-hmm.
Lumen is a place for them too. So there's sort of this sort of brotherhood that develops between the not so practicing and the maybe very practicing, that they're like lifting each other up.
Yeah. No, that is true. I've noticed that as well. That's helpful. And I guess the part of the reason, just to give even a bit more context, why I wanted to have you on is because I mean, your background obviously, but also the fact that you guys you and all of your brother priests work with these business owners. You get to kind of hear about the challenges of business owners in a way that I don't think many other priests do, at least not at this scale. So this is why I wanted to be able to bring you on to talk about some of these issues. So, God willing, this won't be the last time we have you on. We'd like to have you on a regular basis if we can. So what I'm pointing out there, we don't have to cover everything under the sun, but I have a couple things kind of picked out today that I'd like to pick your brain on. If you
Of
feel like you
course.
want to, go deeper
Yep.
on any of these, feel free to do so. But
Let's do it.
let's focus first of all, I guess, on what it means to be an entrepreneur or business owner as a Catholic. So, oftentimes people start a business because they want to get rich or they want to have excess capital. But as Catholics, that can't be our pursuit of money for its own sake isn't really what we should be pursuing. At least that's my understanding.
Right.
So, can you just speak to the correct way to pursue that from your perspective?
Well, I would refer all your listeners, maybe there's not a lot of church documents out there that specifically target the entrepreneur, but one of the ones I really would hope all of you look at eventually, if you haven't already, is what's called the Vocation of the Business Leader document, which came out, I wouldn't say in the last 15 years, roughly. It came out from the Vatican. And that document is a really good modern offering and an effort for the church, I think, to describe the nobility. First of all, I think that one of the key things from that document is that it paints the entrepreneur and the business leader as a noble calling. And when that's something that I think unfortunately, our business professionals don't hear enough, maybe sometimes
Mm-hmm.
when they hear, and whoever we want to call name speak about the faith, right? It's something maybe we overlook a little bit, the need to remind, the noble callings are not just the priests and the nuns. The noble callings are not just the first responders. The noble callings are not just the missionaries. But the church specifically said in that document, you have a noble calling. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're an executive in a business leadership is a noble calling. It's something that God esteems and values and notes and has chosen you for, right? It's a calling, right? That's what I mean. Vocare, right? In the Latin, to call forth, to empower you to do something that not everybody can do. I think that's another thing. I think most entrepreneurs and executives realize not everybody can do what I do. I have certain gifts, and that's not to be proud. Remember, pride is to make yourself the center of the universe. Humility is to live in the truth of who God is, who others are, and who you are. And so that means like I have been entrusted with great talents, and others have not been entrusted with those talents. They have other talents, but I have the talent of leadership. I have the talent of entrepreneurship, the talent of wealth creation, the talent of management, the talent of administration, the talent of direction and empowering others, right? And goal setting, for example. I think our entrepreneurs, that's one thing very important for them to hear, and our executives out there to hear that message. And because again, there's a lot of, I find in my experience of working with hundreds of leaders over the years, that a lot of them Catholics, a lot of them have never heard that. A lot of them actually, when the veneer comes down and they're in that privacy and that confidentiality of the one-to-one conversation, they've been waiting 30, 40, 50 years to tell somebody, you know what? I wonder if I missed the boat by not being a missionary or
Mm-hmm.
a first responder, a policeman or firefighter, because, I really don't know that I'm really truly of value in God's eyes and transcendent good to humanity as a business leader. And that's really sad,
That is
isn't
sad.
it? That's really sad. The meaninglessness and the existential angst that, unfortunately, a lot of business leaders have, Catholic ones have.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one thing that's very important that we get that out there first and foremost.
What is the kind of the basis in that document? I have not read it yet. I know you
Mhm.
suggested it to me. I'll check it out now.
Sure, sure.
What is the basis in that document for saying why it's noble, why the calling is noble?
Okay. So
Quick question for all the Catholic business owners listening. Are you running your business, or is your business running you through all of the admin tasks that you're doing on a regular basis? We see so many founders doing repeatable administrative tasks, and that's why we started Paraclete VA. We bridge the gap by connecting you with high-quality, Catholic, and vetted virtual assistants from all around the world who come from our existing network so that we know we can trust them, and so can you. Many of our Catholic Founders Guild members have hired through this service and are using this to offload their finance, marketing, administrative, and other busy work so that they can focus on what really matters and growing their business. It's the stuff that needs to get done but shouldn't be done by you. The cost is simple. Pay $500 on the day the candidate starts and $500 if you're still happy with them after 30 days. Most hires take less than 10 days to fill. Just email admin@catholicfounders.com with a little bit about what you're looking for. We'll send you some candidates, you do some interviews. Most of the time, you'll have your hire in under 10 days, and this way you can start focusing on what really matters. Stop doing the busy work and start moving the needle.
First of all, they're going to go through scripture in that document, some different quotes there, but certainly one aspect that I think they go into is Genesis, how God creates us good. First of all, there's a basis for everyone. We've each been created very good in God's eyes, the image and likeness of God. So the business leader, of course, the foundation for everything here is that God has created us in His image and likeness out of love, right? Pure love, and that includes the business person. Business is not dirty, inherently dirty, or
Mm-hmm.
less somehow, that God created even business to be good, very good. So, and God commissions Adam and commissions
Mm-hmm.
all of us, right, to go and co-create with God. St. John Paul II wrote a lot about that, in his documents on work, on the dignity of work and such things, right? We're called to co-create with the creator, right? So there's a mission at work there. So again, anything by extension, you can say anytime God calls us to co-create and participate in His creative work, that's a very noble, beautiful, excellent thing. So I think that's a lot of what we're getting at, what they're talking about in that document. So that would be one. Now, of course, I think one thing we might want to talk about a little today is also the parable of the talents. Perhaps that's a very important gospel passage in Matthew's gospel. And again, back to the idea that you have been entrusted with specific talents, specific gifts. That brings brings an inherent nobility of sorts, in a sense, a kingly and prophetic message that you're bringing into it to live and direct and guide a certain sphere of society that affects so many people, right? I
Yeah.
mean, work provides I mean, besides providing jobs and a living wage and providing health care and education, so many things that it helps enable in our world, right? That it's really a deployment of God-given gifts that have been given for a reason. So all that I would say suggests a nobility, a grandeur, a majesty that comes forth from God as the source of all these things, all these goods.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of interesting. It's almost as if, God has certain attributes, obviously, like many different attributes, but it's almost as if the entrepreneurs are the ones who have given the attributes of God that are kind of directing and helping do things, right? And if we lean into it in a way that recognizes that we don't, we're not doing this out of our own abilities because we recognize that this is something that comes from God, then we can become godly in terms of virtue by leaning into the willingness to guide and direct the capital or the assets at our disposal. I'm kind of curious. You mentioned earlier some people, they have this encouragement when they finally hear that there is nobility to their entrepreneurial journey. I'm curious, like if somebody already, let's say they have a concept of this, right? They do understand that there is nobility in it and they can do
Mhm.
entrepreneurship in a Catholic way. If they're just getting
Sure.
started today, what would be your core things for them to focus on as they begin? Like in terms of the objectives that they're working towards, how do you visualize the idea of building a business and being a steward of God? Like most people just say, hey, I'm going to get to this revenue goal. That's what they're trying to do when they get started. I need to get to 10 grand a month or whatever it is to begin. How would you kind of direct them as they set their mind on something? What are the objectives to go after to keep that grounded in reality, that it is noble and that you can be a steward?
Yeah, good question. Well, it would make a good book, actually, just to purely answer that question. Off the top, a couple things might be, well, one, It goes without saying, but I think we can't overestimate it. Is one, I would encourage them to definitely to make time to pray every day, to seek divine guidance, divine vision, right? God, how do you see my company? How do you see me and this company? Some people, some business leaders I know have consecrated their company, their entrepreneurial endeavor to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, let's say, for example. They've done like a business consecration. That's gaining some steam. I've noticed a program you may have heard of called His Way at Work,
Mhm.
which
Yeah, of
Lumen
course.
has worked with. Lumen, His Way at Work, one of their key focal points for the entrepreneur who is actually already practicing their faith, really wanting to really build businesses based on Jesus Christ and his teachings, et cetera. One of the first things they try to help the men and women do is to do a consecration to Christ.
Mhm.
Consecrate their companies to the Sacred Heart. Consecrate their companies to Jesus. So that's a very concrete activity one can do to ground it in the Lord. But what else can you do? Well, certainly building your vision according to the social doctrine of the church. Now, the social, as you may know, there's a compendium of the social doctrine of the church, which goes along with the catechism of the Catholic Church. It's available on the Vatican website. It's available in print, and there are the key principles. There's depending on how you want to name them, but there's four sort of the four primary ones, and then the corollaries like that follow from it. But for example, human dignity, the common good, solidarity, subsidiarity. And then from there, for example, participation, the destination of all goods, right? The universal destination of all goods. In other words, that you're not an absolute owner of what you have, right? You have a duty to share the wealth and to help those who need the gifts that you've been given, et cetera. So for example, building your company on human dignity, which means, for example, that every person is created in God's image and likeness. They deserve to be loved, not used, not abused, but they're an end in themselves. And the proper response to each person is love, right? So for example, how do you as you build the company out and you're looking forward and envision the future, well, how do you build a corporate culture where everyone feels loved and respected? There's a great book out there, if you've heard of the Five Love Languages, famous book, right, for relationships. Well, there's actually a book by the same authors applied to business
Mm.
called The Five Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. And they apply those five forms of love, the way people feel and experience love to the workplace in terms of how do you show appreciation through gift giving, through words of affirmation, through acts of service and all that. So are you building entrepreneurs? Are you building a workplace environment where people know the language of appreciation and is being expressed and rewarded in the corporate culture, right? For example.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly sometimes simpler than I think it sounds too simple in some ways because it is very basic. Like if we love all humans, if we treat them with respect, there's going to be good that comes out of that. I mean, I've written a lot about the ideas that when you love your customer and your employees, etc., you're going to end up having easier customer acquisition. You're going to have more retention for your employees, etc.
Of
There's just a lot
course.
of
Oh
things
yeah. Oh
that
yeah.
are in benefits. Again, you don't do them for the sake of the benefit. You do them because it's the right thing to do. So I think that's a good basis. Yeah, well, definitely to recap that the prayer daily to seek how God views your business, consecrating to Him, and then recognizing that the point is to love all humans as created in the image and likeness of God, and then you can go from there. Right? There's a lot of things you can build
Oh,
on
there's a
top of that.
lot. Oh, of course. You can build a whole word and we're just getting started on this topic,
Yeah,
right? There's so
exactly.
much more to build it out.
Yeah. So you mentioned the topic of the parable of the talents and the stewards. This is a
Mhm.
very, very common thing for us to think about. I'd like for you to just like kind of riff on this and go a little deeper. What are the core things that you tend to consider or to bring up to business owners when reflecting on this particular parable?
Well, one, there's a great scriptural commentator. His name is Erasmo Maristakis Lieva. He wrote a 4-volume set on the commentary on Matthew's Gospel, a beautiful Fire of Mercy, Heart of the Word, it's called. And he goes it wrote probably, I don't know, 70, 80 pages of commentary on this passage. And one of the beautiful reflections he has is basically the language of the parable is saying, will you trust my trust in you? That's God speaking to the person. Will you trust my trust in you? In other words, that kind of let's center this contemplation, let's center this experience of stewarding a company, let's say as a business owner, an entrepreneur. Do I really grasp that God trusts me? That he's given me talents. It's not just that he expects me. It's not, sometimes the Catholic, a lot of people tell me, Father, our religion is a religion of guilt, guilt complex, being guilted into stuff, that's not the fundamental paradigm of Catholicism as the church has always seen it, right? The fundamental paradigm is a loving father who cares about his children and he blesses them with many gifts and he trusts them. right? To work and collaborate with him in his kingdom. This idea of entrusting, like a father trusts his child and kind of mentors him, apprentices him, like almost like you think of apprenticeship in a business. Like the Heavenly Father is apprenticing us in his work of creating with him. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing, but I think we got to start. You always got to come back and be rooted in the vine of Christ. And if we just kind of go to like let's implement, well, we're gonna probably miss it. Let's start by contemplating and kind of every day remind ourselves that like God, he really trusts me, right? He cares about me. And if he trusts me with something, that means he's empowered me to do this, right? If he gave you a mission as a business owner, he's also empowered you to live this out, right? He's not just going to like, oh yeah, my son, go and do this. And, by the way, I'm not going to be around you. I'm not going to help you. And I'm going to punish you when you mess up, by the way, and hellfire's waiting for you when you mess up. And I know probably a lot of you are going to get that. That's the way sometimes I think people think the way they talk about this stuff. Rather, no, I have a loving father who's there mentoring me. He's walking with me and he's giving me the strength to live out these talents that he's given. So I think the first and foremost, that parable is speaking about God. God really has given me, you and me a lot. And he hopes in me. And he's like, kind of yearning for me to collaborate with him, to lean in and take risks, right? And really develop this muscle of entrepreneurship, if that's the gift I've been given, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's important. And then, of course, we follow through the parable. There's a lot of things we can gather there. I mean, for example, you just cut me off if I start going down the rabbit hole here.
No,
But
keep going.
some of the main things I would suggest is one, again, remember a talent in Scripture is equivalent to a great sum of money, a great sum of wealth. Even if you have only one talent and it's entrepreneurship, you've received a lot from God. And we know we have a lot more than just that gift. We have a lot more things like we talked about, God, being children of God, many other gifts you have in your life. But let's just take entrepreneurship, business leadership. It is an immense amount of wealth. God is an abundant God, not a miserly me, give you the bare minimum. He gives you an abundance, right? So we know that the talent of entrepreneurship and business leadership is a great talent with a lot behind it. We also see him give different amounts to different ones. And that back to the idea that he gives, it's not to say you're better or less than someone else, but some people he gives the gift of entrepreneurship and executive leadership. Others he doesn't give that gift to. He chose this for you and others for different things. So to realize, okay, I've been chosen and I have a special gift. Now he wants me to go and develop it, right? Invest it. So let's not play games with his talents. Let's actually realize, okay, I have a stewardship. I don't know if you ever watched the show. This maybe before, I don't know, before your time or not, but I think most of your viewers probably know the name Tom Selleck. And Tom Selleck was
of him,
yeah. So as an actor, he was in a show years ago called Magnum PI. It was like an investigator show. And he kind of plays he's out there and he's investigating crimes, investigating situations and all that. And he works very closely and is a friend with this guy, Higgins. And Higgins is this butler in this amazing mansion. And they have all the cars and the beautiful property and all these different things. You never see the master of the house. He's like always away. Some people speculate that Higgins was actually the master just in disguise. But the point is that Tom Selleck wanted to use the cars and different things to have fun and different things sometimes. But the butler the administrator, Higgins, was always very refined and very no, this is the master stuff. I'm just a caretaker. Do I sometimes act in my business dealings and my entrepreneurship as if I'm the master instead of the steward? Right. I'm entrusted and there will be an accounting one day, right? The master will come back and ask me to give me his return. Give me what fruit did you bear on the gift I gave you, the talent I gave you? So the entrepreneur who buries his talent, right? That's a reprehensible and a to be chastised decision. And that's why, the guy that buried it, kind of the image of the ostrich, head in the sand, right? Just kind of hiding and ignoring is not to be lauded or commended.
Yeah. Hey guys, Silas Maynor here. If you'd like to host a Catholic Founders Meetup in your area, reach out to us today and we'll help you organize it. It's not good for us to build alone. It's better to work together with the other Catholic business owners in our community so that we can assert our influence and bring the culture back to God. But all of this starts with knowing who the other Catholic business owners are. It starts with friendship, whether that's over breakfast, over bagels, going to adoration and spending some time together for drinks afterwards, doesn't really matter. We can't do this without friendship. Reach out to us at admin@catholicfounders.com and we will help you organize your event, get started, and promote it. Thank you for being part of this community. This is an interesting thing. I think we could take it from here. I mean, those are, first of all, really powerful reflections. I hadn't necessarily I've thought about this parable a decent amount. I definitely had not thought about that first point you brought about, which is that God is longing for us to be part of this, right? We're not just simply receivers, if you will, of what God has in store for us. He also wants to be active participants in what he has in store for other people in the world. And I think that would probably somehow in some way tie into the transcendental of unity, like becoming one with God, like this whole experience of being one inside of the church, right? Like we help each other and we can become godly in that way. So
Yep.
that's a whole different topic we can go on. But this point about the one talent, even if it's only one talent, is a great talent and you don't want to bury it. I've asked this question a lot of times to people I've met or people on the podcast around if somebody, let me back up a little bit. I often find that a lot of Catholics nowadays, especially Catholic men, are
Hmm.
hesitant to pursue entrepreneurship because the primary, I guess you'd say, how do I say this? The primary cultural objective of our entrepreneurship is usually just become wealthy, right? And if they are a very holy, Catholic person, you're probably going to be like, oh no, I'm not here to try to get wealthy. So sometimes you've got really talented people who are very holy who should be building businesses, but they are afraid to pursue that because in their mind it's just all about money. So I'm just kind of curious if you could comment on the opposite. People who might have good talents and who are, how would you encourage them to just really begin and to go down this path of entrepreneurship so they can provide for their family or for their communities in some way?
Without being falling in the trap of the financial side, you mean?
Yeah, of course. I mean, just even if that's their biggest fear, let's say they have a lot of talents and their fear is, hey, I don't want to go down this road because I'm worried that I'm going to just become, greedy. Like how
Yeah.
would you
Yeah.
encourage them to begin?
Well, back to this theme about how God hopes in you, right? That again, if God is trusting you with this, he's going to help you live it. So I think a lot of the Christian walk and a lot of our issues and a lot of our questions in life, they do always come back. Some say that the central message of the gospel, the central message of all the story of salvation from Genesis to Revelation is a story of, do we trust God or not? Do we trust God as a heavenly father who keeps his promises or not? Do I trust God as the creator, my redeemer, my savior, my friend who's at my side always? Do I trust that or not? Right? Because if I do or I don't, it has huge implications in the social life, my decision making, my attitudes. And so back to this concrete example, one, I would encourage him to go back and contemplate how much God trusts him and how much God is there to strengthen him, to purify his intentions. That even the whole theme of consecrating your company on the front end, like we talked about. Well, one way to deal with that fear a little bit, or kind of get off, let's anchor this again back in Christ. Lord, I consecrate this to you. I know there's a temptation. I know there's a possibility I could, get caught up with the glitz and glamour if a lot of money starts rolling in. That's real, right? And that's part of the risk. Like anything, following God is always a risk. And temptation, roadblocks are there for all of us, whether you're a priest, a businessman, mother, a father, a single person, in whatever pursuit of life you're in right now. I mean, following God always has risks, and there will be falls, there'll be temptations, there'll be stumbling going along. And then as you're going through that process and building the business, and certainly as, like, as an example, I've told many guys, as they, if their company starts to get really blessed financially and they're starting to really rake it in, so to speak, we're coming up on Lent right now. Almsgiving, one of the forms of almsgiving is financial almsgiving. It's like, well, if you sense all this money is coming down the pike, well, what about making a discerned commitment to dedicate 10% of this wealth to Christ and his church? What about dedicating? I know there's a guy here in Houston who's been extremely blessed financially, Christian, not a Protestant businessman here in town. He dedicates 50% of his yearly income to Christ and building the kingdom through all
Wow.
kinds of youth work, youth camps, other things like that. 50%, very wealthy man, 50% every year goes to charity, goes to building the kingdom, mostly Christian causes. So again, these are just examples, but I just encourage the person, like, hey, look, there are ways, starting with your relation with Christ in prayer and consecrating your company, but then along the way, you and your spouse, for example, let's make strategic commitments to help guarantee that you're not going to, become a slave and turn into an idol, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really helpful. I mean, as people, I'd like to continue on this thread. As people gain success in their business endeavors, what do you see as the ways to maintain that humility aside from, the commitments up front? Some people make these commitments up front, so it's much easier as they begin to go. But then in some cases, you have people who are It's not as serious because at the beginning it's a smaller business, but later
Sure,
one day you have a lot of profits. Now you
sure.
actually have, I would argue, much more weight on your shoulders because there's much more responsibility. So, how would you recommend as you gain that success to really stay grounded? Is it just about the daily plan of life, the routine? What do you advise people usually?
Well, there's a famous prayer, the litany of humility. It's called.
Hmm.
Many a business leader has been served by that litany to pray that every day. It's not an easy prayer to pray. If you haven't seen it, you can look it up and learn for
It is
yourself.
pretty
That's not
challenging.
maybe not. It's a challenging prayer. So that could be a good prayer to daily pray to God. Of course, a prayer of there's different ones. Like sometimes we'll call it a prayer of surrender, a prayer of self dedication. These type of prayers could be a good daily prayer to pray one of them a day, for example, to keep grounded. I also, again, I mentioned like just generically setting a number to give away, but back to even discerning like what are some of those concrete charities, concrete ways of building God's kingdom that I'm going actually making that part of my mission from the get go, like building that into my business. Again, some people they leverage their business for impact, so they're going to dedicate portions of the company revenue. I know people who've put in, whatever, of 10% of profit goes into the foundation, let's say, or 10%, or they create programs. For example, his way at work recommends creating programs that are for the benefit of either the physical, emotional, or spiritual health of the employees, and then have programs that benefit the employee's family, and then programs that are for the greater community around where the company is. So if you kind of think of a matrix, like a grid, XY grid, again on the ground, on the horizontal is employee family, employee family, and greater community. The Y axis, vertical axis is physical needs, emotional needs, or psychological needs, and then even spiritual needs. And so, help working with your employees or yourself, if you're kind of a sole proprietorship at the moment, to kind of let me discern creating some different programs, buckets to impact, be it my employee, be it the employee's families, be it the greater community with the funds of the company. So that as the company grows, these programs scale up and I have more of
Huh.
them. That could be everything from workplace chaplains, which some companies do, people go into the company as a Christian minister, check on the employees, go to the hospitals or the families to visit. I know companies that do that kind of thing. They provide psychological counseling for those struggling with addiction and maybe even paid leave to get rehab, paid leave plus paying for the rehab for the employee, for example. Or the sky's the limit. There's a lot of different
Yeah.
options out there in that area we could talk about or look up. You could look up later. So
Hmm.
all these things, and the point is, all these things can ground you as a business owner, business executive, entrepreneur, to help you make sure your north is on Christ, His kingdom, and not turning self-referential.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, the thing is, it seems as though the theme with all of those is understanding that stewardship is about a lot more than just growing your pot of money, right? It's like it's easy in modern terms to think, okay, the stewards meaning they had these talents and they were supposed to just make more money, make more talents with those talents, right? And it's much more than that, right? In your case here, like it's all about you have people who work for you and if you are having, extremely excess capital coming from it, maybe, consider extra benefits to help those families, help them build wealth, help their families. Like it's the holistic thing because if we recognize that this life is only about getting to heaven, right? That's the only purpose
Right.
for our existence, then the same is true of every other human. So why don't we do whatever we can to help our employees and their family and their community to achieve the same? And that can be things that, may not be financial at all. It can be many other things, right? Usually can pay for these things. But I'm curious to get your perspective on this idea of oftentimes it's very striking when you see Christ kind of stoop down in the Gospels to doing the lowliest of things. Right? He goes very direct with the people. He doesn't. In very few cases does he actually heal people from a distance. It's one on one.
Yes.
I think executives tend to, especially as your business becomes very successful, there seems to be this more space that creates between you and the average person, so to speak. Have you seen any particular examples of the importance of still staying grounded from doing some of these things yourself rather than just putting it into a program and allowing somebody else to do it where you don't necessarily see the impact yourself?
Sure. Sure. I've seen executives, they go out in the field, they actually are with the callers and take some of the phone calls on the front lines, or they're out there with the janitorial staff, and they're like, clean the bathrooms with them, taking their turn doing it. They're out on the work site, on the drilling rigs or whatever with the folks. I mean, it can seem just symbolic, and maybe for some executives out there, it is going through the motions in a photo op. But guys that I've met over the years, many of them are very sincere about it. They're like they really want to understand their employees. They want to be out in the field. They want to know what's on because those are the people that will really tell you how things are really operating. And frankly, it's a chance to tell your people that you matter, that you're the backbone of the company, that I care about you, that you're remembered, valued, et cetera, right? It's I would sometimes call it, from a priest standpoint, but also maybe for all of you out there, like it's like a ministry of presence. It's a ministry of presence, right? And that's a very powerful form of leadership to be there in the field with people. Again, because of your role, that can't be what you do necessarily every
All
day,
the time.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be doing strategy, you have to be doing vision, you have to be all that kind of stuff. That's all part and parcel of your leadership and what you have to do. And people are depending on you to do that. But there's also a time to be out there like, look, I mean, right now, the most important thing I can do is listen to the people, right? The backbone of
Yeah.
the company. And that goes a long way.
Yeah, certainly. Now, what are some of the, this will be the last major question, then we'll talk a little bit about Lent. What are the biggest pitfalls that you see people tend to kind of miss and they fall into as they begin to achieve, more success?
Well, Silas, I think that one of the main things in our culture is hurry, like the frenetic hurry, the obsession with I need to get back to people right away, getting out of bed and answering text messages immediately. Don't get me wrong, there are important things, and you all carry a lot of burden and responsibility. And on behalf of the church, I thank. And back to the nobility of it all, I thank you for your example, trying to live this well. But I think we have to remember that the first goal, the first priority is to be united to the vine of Christ and be united to our Lord. And you mentioned unity and communion with the Lord. So I think one of the big temptations and one of the big weaknesses, whether it's at the beginning, the middle, or latter part of business leadership trajectory of age and time in this trenches, right, is that we give into the excuse that I got so much to do and I don't have time to
Yeah.
pray. I don't care how seasoned a business person you are or how seasoned a priest you are or whatever role you find yourself in, it's a very real temptation no matter at what stage you are. I think it's really there. So I think yes, let's ground ourselves well. I find, back to the theme of financials, giving, maybe we can touch about this in Lent a little bit too, but as people grow and the quantities of wealth can grow, or they start getting these big bonuses, or all of a sudden they make their first million or whatever it may be, there's a lot of good desire and there's a lot of goodwill, but there's also a tendency to delay giving. And as one person once told me years ago, it's like, why are you depriving yourself of the joy of giving now? You're withholding joy from your life, because Jesus Christ himself even said, like, there's no greater love, there's no greater joy than to give. It's more joyful to give than to receive. So again, not necessarily saying you got to give it all away, but like in a sense, you can take the thermometer of a successful entrepreneur and a business person. Is like, where is the generosity thermometer with their
Mm.
finances and their material and their time? And are they deferring? Are they punting? Look, I'll get to it later. Oh, my financial advisor is telling me it's not a convenient time. We've got to wait another year or two. It's like, really? Is that? Have you talked to Jesus more than you talked to your wealth advisor? Like, really? It's that big a deal you can't give away 1% even now after you just had a windfall, right?
Yeah.
Really? So those are some really important thermometers. I say it's not all about money. I know people are like, oh, the church this, the church that about money. Well, it's not everything, but it is something, and it's part of your stewardship. And so if you want to stay faithful as an entrepreneur, and especially these financial blessings, you have to look at that a little bit and say, am I really feeling a little bit the bite of sacrificial giving?
Yeah. If you're a Catholic business owner, you should not be building alone. Join the Catholic Founders Guild at CatholicFounders.com/subscribe. For $10 a month, you can join a group of Catholic founders who are dedicated to bringing the culture back to God. Don't build alone. Join the Catholic Founders Guild today. It is definitely tangible though, which is the reason I like talking about the money component, because there's no, there is no simply pretending, right? It is do you or do you not, right? And the same thing is true, I guess, also of your calendar with your time and prayers, like do you or do you not? And if you do believe in the fact that we have to face eternity when we die, you should be living in a way that your daily life would reflect that. It's like based on just observing this person's life for one day, any
Yeah.
random day out of
Yeah.
their year, does it appear that they take eternity seriously? So,
Yeah. Yeah. And I would just also suggest talking to have a good advisor or two, someone that you esteem that's actually walking the walk, that sharpen the saw with another person, if not a group, at least another individual, and perhaps also a spiritual director. If you can find a good spiritual director that kind of you feel comfortable talking, even if it's only like once or twice, 3 times a year, even just more every so often conversations, all of that can kind of keep you honest, right? And
yeah.
we all have a blind side. And,
Hmm.
we all, especially the more leadership you have, all the more important you have a trusted advisor too that can really tell you, you know, give you objective feedback,
Yeah,
right?
of course. Certainly. So,
Great.
as we go into Lent here, what are the things that Catholic entrepreneurs should consider or think about, whether that is, related to almsgiving, time giving, or simply just entering into the challenges of business? Because we've talked a lot about success, but obviously there's a lot of challenges in business too. I'm
Yeah.
just kind of curious your perspective there.
Yeah, well, if we're going to talk about Lent, of course, it sort of goes without saying. It's sort of spiritual spring training. It's time to get really intense and intentional about what we're called to live all year long, which is yes, we're following Christ, we're seeking a deeper conversion. The lifeblood of that is prayer, fasting, almsgiving. Almsgiving from the Greek word meaning a merciful minded attitude or merciful minded giving. So it's more than money; it's time, talent, treasure. It's a helpful a listening ear. It can be forgiving. It can be mentoring others. It could be listening to a child and giving attention to maybe a child, one of your children that maybe just needs more support right now. So those 3 areas are always part of the Christian walk, the Catholic walk. We're called to kind of zero in on maybe slightly intensify each of them for love of Christ. And so I would encourage everyone listening to take advantage, if you haven't already thought about these three, to maybe like quickly do so and come up with maybe a resolution in each of those areas, or at least one of those areas, prayer, maybe adding a little more time of contemplation. For example, a little more silence. The readings for Lent are specific to Lent and also the Easter season. So you might follow the mass readings of each day and spend a little time on those at the beginning of the day, for example, or pause in the middle of your day for 5, 10 minutes. Doing an examination of conscience midday or something could be good. Some people do the Stations of the Cross every day or a couple times a week, go to adoration maybe. Anyway, sky's the limit. Ask Jesus what he wants of you is the point, to up that a little bit. I give up something that I love, I care, I desire, I'm attracted to, for the greater love, which is Jesus Christ. All those desires that are shooting my heart all over the place, they all kind of collapse through fasting for the Lord. They all sort of collapse and converge in the North Star of love for Christ when we fast for him, right? So again, it could be something physical, food, drink. Social media is a popular one these days. Get a little more into silence, a little more quiet. Avoid the TV or the social media feed. It could be fun. It might be on a more spiritual plane of, gossiping, of, maybe emotional relationships with someone who's not your spouse, or, something that's unhealthy for you right now in your walk with Christ, to kind of put some distance and boundaries there, perhaps, whatever it may be, to kind of, for the love of Christ Jesus, I give it to you and I offer it for this intention. Good to always have an intention for this person, for the Pope, for vocations, for my marriage, for whatever it may be. And then, kind of land it back on almsgiving. Again, back to that merciful minded heart. Again, money is certainly the go to, what we think about a lot. And we certainly, if we're not already sort of sacrificially giving financially within our means, right? Each one has X amount of disposable, money right now, let's say at hand. Well, quantity is not the point. It's the availability and the sacrificial spirit that matters, right? But don't be limited by the financials, right? Think about the time. Think about, again, showing mercy, right? We celebrated the year of mercy a few years ago, the Jubilee year of mercy. Well, is there a person in my life that I'm still really, I haven't forgiven, that I am avoiding? Sometimes we have to healthily avoid certain people. But in my heart of hearts, have I turned that over to God? And God, I want that to be made right in heaven, and I forgive. Right? Is it I'm discriminatory towards certain people, and I kind of look down on certain ethnicities or certain individuals around me at work, or what have you. So there's a lot of room. I think it's easy. Sometimes it's easy to write a check, or sometimes it's easy to give time. It's not easy to forgive, or
Mm,
it's not easy for some. It's hard to write a check or to get involved with volunteering or to mentor someone, let's say. So
yeah.
ask the Lord, what's the stretch in giving mercy? What's the stretch you're asking me? What's the door you want me to walk through this Lent? So that's where everyone's going to be a little different. But the key is to be not just do the yearly chocolate or the yearly sweets or the yearly. I
Yeah.
mean, if you think Jesus is asking that, not discouraging it, but back to like I've actually taken time. It's like, you're going to do a deal, you just deliberate it seriously and hopefully pray
Mhm.
about it too. Well, are we deliberating with the Lord in his presence, maybe going to adoration or taking some just quiet time and just, Jesus, I'm putting my life on the table here now. I want to follow you more closely, be converted more deeply to you. Prayer, fasting, almsgiving. What's it going to be, Lord? What do you want from me? You've been
Yeah.
good to me. I want to give back to you, Lord.
Yeah, I found this is really helpful. I think if I might add one thing, I would just encourage people to, if they don't know necessarily feel they have a true desire to put God above all things, just ask for it, right? Because like first thing you have to do is ask for the grace to desire God above all things. It's not like it's something
Exactly.
that other people already have because they just are naturally gifted that way. It is something we
Correct.
receive from God, right? Which is
Yeah.
it's just when you do realize it, it's quite humiliating, honestly, that we don't even have the ability to truly desire God on our own. We even need his
Yeah.
help for that.
Yes. So true.
Incredible. This has been really, really great, Father. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing these things. There's a lot of value here. I hope people kind of listen to this slowly and reflect on it. And I'm excited to have you on again, hopefully in the near future to talk about other topics. At some point, I would love to be able to cover your own story and journey into the priesthood. I wasn't aware that you had this aspiration to be a billionaire at one point, so I think we should uncover that another time. But thank you so much for coming on, and we'll have to
You're
see you
welcome,
soon.
Sus. You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Catholic Founders. We are, as you may have noticed, releasing this episode a couple days early, right before Lent begins. If you're listening to this the same day it comes out, it should be Tuesday. But if not, either way, the point is, if you have not already made strong Lenten resolutions, I really, really, really encourage you to look at your calendar right now. So what I want you to do is take an hour, ideally in front of the Blessed Sacrament. It's better to do this intentionally than just doing it willy-nilly. Get some time in front of the Blessed Sacrament. Leave your phone in the car, bring a notepad, and just ask God, which areas of your life are you not giving 100%? Because a lot of us have some sort of spiritual routine. We have some kind of practices that we do, but a lot of times they start to kind of like cool off. They start to get a little bit lighter. And let's figure out which of those areas they are, because in reality, all of us have these sort of anchors that are tying us down to earth and preventing us from going up to heaven. And those are the core things that we need to be able to cut. So what are those attachments? Maybe it's money, maybe it's your time, how you're spending it. Maybe it's your status in the world. Maybe it's the music you listen to or the food you eat, right? There's a lot of things. Maybe it's just generally comforts, right? As business owners, a lot of times once we achieve some success, we don't feel so bad. We put in a lot of effort, so we don't feel so bad about giving ourselves these kind of comforts in life. So whatever they are, just figure out what they are and pick those things to work on. Ideally, you're going to want to pick one thing in each area. You don't want it to be complicated. So prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. Commit to doing one thing in each of those categories. Again, this time, this hour is for you to spend figuring out which thing am I going to do specifically in each of those areas. So what prayers am I going to add, perhaps? Maybe actually it's about what prayers you're already doing, but you're just doing them poorly. Maybe you have a habit of saying the rosary, but you kind of just run through it. At the bare minimum, start reinvigorating that. Maybe just take a time to do one decade extremely well and commit to doing that. That little bit of beginning, kind of getting things going again, may end up helping you finish the rest of the rosary well too. So sometimes it's not always adding new things. It's sometimes just reinvigorating what you have. Regarding fasting, what am I giving up? Is it food or something else? I would encourage a lot of people, especially business owners, screen time, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. These things, when you cut them out, it allows you to have more silence and more time directly with God. So screen time is a really, really big one. I definitely encourage that. And then lastly, almsgiving. What are you going to give? Is it going to be time to God? Are you going to give some more financially? Whatever it is, figure it out. It could be writing thank you notes to people around you. Maybe you've developed a habit of kind of expecting things, but maybe you can show some gratitude every day to somebody in a particular way. Make it concrete, though. This is the big thing, is make it concrete. No one of us is perfect, and each one of us has something that we can do to deepen our faith. So the question is, at this crossroads, what are you going to do? Will you acknowledge the fact that you have to improve, that you have room to improve, and then go down that fork in the road, that kind of road less traveled, if you will? Or will you continue on the path that you already know, the path that's comfortable? If you found this valuable, please share it with a fellow Catholic entrepreneur and consider joining the Catholic Founders Guild if you'd like to be surrounded by others who genuinely believe that they are called to bring God into the world. If you want to use your business and your enterprise and your skills as a tool to just dedicate towards God, to bring glory to his name, then consider joining the Guild. That's the primary reason for it. There's many other benefits you can receive from it, financial and otherwise, but the point of it is to surround yourself with like-minded people who will push you to be better and to come up with new ways that you can really dedicate your life to God fully. As always, remember, you are created to create.